Skidmore College. I majored in economics and environmental studies, and then moved down to New York City, started working at BNP Paribas for a couple of years, financing corporates in the energy space, and then decided that I really wanted to focus more on climate change, risk opportunities, and learn about how people, businesses could really respond to climate change financially. So,
and how's it been?
It's been fast. Oh, this is not for me. I'm not sure who should have this, but it's been really good.
You're the inaugural, our first inaugural test baby cohort.
Yeah, no, I love being a test baby. It's like kind of what I get to. It feels like being a first born or an eldest. I don't know if any of you are, but that's what it feels like. I'm a middle child, so it's like stepping into my sister's shoes, but it's been really fast. I'd say the program has been enriching, but really good overall. I'm learning a lot. Yeah, challenging in some ways, but learning a lot, honestly. Just good, just very fast. So that's what I would say, because somehow it's March. 2 weeks ago it was January, so I don't know where the time's going. But yeah.
Well, you'll be here, so there are questions for
Yes,
you later.
I
too.
will be
Okay.
here.
Thank you so much, Esther.
One housekeeping note, thank you, Esther, before I forget. So is everybody gonna take the walk over to the business school with me to hear Gernot Wagner's? Okay, great. So you'll have lunch after this. We're gonna wrap up here at 11:45. You have lunch. I will meet you at 12, it does not say this in the schedule.
12:45,
I will meet you at 12:45.
No, wait. Oh, yeah.
12:45.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry,
No.
1:45.
1:45.
1:45. By 12:45, I mean 1:45, because it starts at 2:10, but I want us, it's really just a 5-minute walk. If anyone has any kind of accessibility issues, please come see me immediately so we can work that out. It's a 5-minute walk, but I want us to take our time. It's also on the 9th floor where a lot of people, it'll take time for the elevators, etc. And I don't like to be late. So 1:45, you will look for me in the lobby. After you have lunch, I'll stand by the main doors. So that's housekeeping before I forget. Secondly, this is going to be pretty informal. You can see we're not like super formal people together in our working relationship, but we really, this is your time. Lisa has a lot she wants to say about vision and direction of the program as she sees it, where people land, you know, the kinds of jobs that people are orienting themselves around, all of that. I want to say a few things about co-curricular opportunities. We'll say that at the end, but we want to also save room for your questions. So just to give you kind of the framing on like what's going to happen. So take it away.
The co-curricular you're going to do at the end?
You want me to do it now?
Yeah, let's do it now.
Okay, I'm going to talk about it right now.
Yeah.
All right, so this is just an example because a slide cannot be too busy, but I could have made 7,000 more words on this slide. But I just wanted you to have a sense of the kinds of things that are happening outside the classroom. They're happening outside the classroom in the climate school, outside on the Columbia University campus, and outside with industry, because we're so lucky to be in New York and have connections to all of these industry, to all of these professionals in our midst. So I just wanted to give you a picture of like this is just from the beginning of the semester till now. Okay, just as a snapshot. There's a ton that happened in the fall. There's a ton more that's going to happen after spring break, etc. But just to give you a sense of some of the speakers that have come in the practitioner series that I run, Lisa Sachs has the most amazing network. So literally, students come to me. This is how it works. Lisa says, invite in these 10 people. I say, great, fine, done. And all the people say, oh, I can't wait, climate finance, that's an exciting new degree. I want to be part of that. I want to talk to your students. So they come. Then the students come to me and say, can't you find somebody who's interested or knows a lot about this? That knows a lot because I'm interested in this topic. I'm like, Lisa, who do you know? She's like, bop. I call them, they say yes. So that's kind of what happens there. So there's a lot of access to people working in the field. Then the team here also puts together skills seminars. These are the 2 recent ones. There's a lot more. There's numerous ones over the course of the year. Some of them are just what climate school leadership thinks are things that students should know. And some are because students came and said, hey, we really like the financing renewable energy project finance. Students said, I want to know more about project finance. And there's a course at the business school, but it's not happening until the spring, or maybe I didn't get into that course. So what can you do? So we bring in professionals for that. Lisa's network, again, saves the day because there's all these industry conferences happening in New York. Lisa negotiates a comm ticket or 2 or 5 or 10, and then our students can apply to go. If there's a lot, they apply, and if not, they just go. And I work with you to set that up. We have Lunch and Learn. This one just happened about 2 weeks ago with an engineering professor and one of the gurus from Lisa's team, the Columbia Center on Sustainable Investment. that's just one example. Like I said, this is a snapshot of just 2 months. And then last but not least, I just want to tell you that there's student-driven things that are happening too. So this cohort, Evan is one of them who you met, Esther is another, and then 57 other humans have put together the Columbia Climate Finance Network, and they're bringing in speakers. They're setting up mentoring arrangements on their own that are aligned with the kind of industries and verticals that they're interested in. So all of this is happening together with the career talks that the career team just told you about. So there's tons and tons and tons happening. And my wish is that you come here and you complain to me that you have too much to do and not enough time, and I will be happy because I will know that we are giving you a lot more than what you're getting in the classroom, which is already extraordinary. And then just no time to go through all of this, but I just want to show you, not only does Lisa and other faculty members talk about like what are the knowledge areas that are critical for someone coming out of this program to have, what should they have exposure to? That's part of this list. And the other part is in the survey, in the summer, I surveyed the incoming class and said, what do you want to learn about? And I said, oh, some of these things are a class. Some of these things are speakers. Some of these things are happening in a climate week event. So it's like these concepts get integrated throughout the year in different forms. So that is a dynamic process, and that is a process shaped by you. This is not a formula. This is a snapshot of what last year's class and Lisa Sachs and others devised that kind of guided our thinking, but it's going to be different for you all. And I'm sure there'll be overlap, but there'll be new areas as well. And my job is to make those things happen in partnership with the team here. So I just wanted to let you know that that's something to kind of think about. And when you accept, hopefully you accept and you come and you'll start seeing surveys from me and from others about these kinds of things. So please fill out the surveys because that's how they work in the process. So that's what I want to say about co-curricular opportunities. All right, Lisa.
Thank you. Okay, I'll try to be brief so that we can have questions and discussion. First, let me just say I love this program. This has been a dream, and the two pieces of it besides program, which I will describe, the fact that we're in New York and the fact that I can bring in this network, which I'm really privileged to have, to me is part of the program. It's not separate too. I didn't even know what co-curricular meant until you told me this slide. So to me, this is like
Ecosystem.
plus, yeah, exactly. But that has always been the design. We started talking about it before, just that it's the pedagogical approach in the classroom, but also the constant exposure to the practitioners. And then the third most amazing thing about the program is Tricia. Truly, which you'll see, but Tricia's been absolutely incredible in making all of this possible. I love that you like that I can come to you and say I have too many things to do and not enough time, because that sounds like what I'm coming to say to you all the time. So I'll give you a tiny bit of a background on me and my approach to the program, and then a little bit of what you might expect, and then mostly want to hear about your interests. So I've been at Columbia my whole adult life, 21 years. 17 of those, my background is in law and policy. I went to SIPA in the law school, and then joined immediately this embryonic program on international investment that was just the professor that had set it up. And I joined kind of as a program coordinator, program administrator, because I wanted to be thinking about, first of all, I did not want to leave a university. I really like being in a university, but I wanted to be thinking about my orientation has always been toward quote unquote sustainable development, however defined, just that we want to live in livable, peaceful, decent societies. And I think about that in all different sectors, nature and clean air and healthy food systems and dignity and good work opportunities and so on. And I thought about that when I went to law school, mainly in terms of like the governance framework. How do the laws and policies shape the society that we want to live in? And a big part of that is and I thought of that as how that shapes the economy and what gets financed. So that's why the idea of thinking about investment resonated with me. So that was my original orientation. And the sector that I was originally most fascinated by was the extractive sector, the mining sector. And so in my earliest years, we were working a lot with governments that were resource-rich governments that have a lot of mining, but we're not benefiting them from sustainable development. For anyone who's studied extractive industries, this is a very common story that we haven't cracked after 20 years, including all the work that we've been trying to do. So we were working in Mozambique and East Timor, and these countries that had a lot of natural resource wealth, but it's not materializing into sustainable development. That has remained a challenge, but it has been the most extraordinary education, because when we started looking at that sector, you realized you also needed to understand energy systems and transport and water and information communication technologies. And access to public finance and who are all the development partners and who are all these institutions and how did the private sector fit in. And so it was the best education right early on the need to understand the systems that shape reality and how the different sectors relate to one another and different institutions, and then what happens locally and how that relates to what happens nationally and regionally and internationally. So that it's been a 17-year so far, 17 and ongoing master's plus degree in trying to understand those systems and how they shape the economy. What brought me to finance was that about 8 years ago or 9 years ago during and I've been teaching at Columbia for most of that time, for 12 years, and I was teaching a class on extractive industries and sustainable development, and most of my students wanted to go into the public sector, World Bank. Then around 8 or 9 years ago, during kind of the boom of sustainable finance, a lot of my students started wanting to go into ESG roles. And I was confused by what people thought ESG meant or what sustainable finance meant. I wasn't in finance. I had worked in kind of shareholder engagement at one point even earlier on in my career, but I was just trying to make what I thought was a basic point, which is that ESG is not the same as financing sustainable development. I just thought that was a basic understanding. Turns out it's not a basic understanding, and this field of sustainable finance is very confused. It's very confused in what it's purporting to do and in what it can do and what the objectives are and so on. So that is what I wouldn't say shifted, but massively expanded what my interests were into really thinking about finance and what the intersection is of finance and sustainability. And I say intersection because I think of it as there are multiple points of intersection, as you can see in this. There's two basic different points of intersection. One is how sustainability and climate impact finance from a risk perspective, from an opportunity perspective, and how investment opportunities and considerations are changing. Then completely separately, there's what are we trying to finance and what makes it financeable and how do we mobilize those finance? Those are very different, but massively conflated. Then there are other intersections, like how do we want to price and distribute the risk of loss? So insurance mechanisms or fiscal stability or financial system stability. These are many different objectives that I think we don't sort out properly in our finance ecosystem. I feel like I've benefited from years of understanding systems and the multiple actors and not coming from any particular discipline or silo or approach to try to understand what are the problems, what makes something, what are we trying to achieve, and who are the relevant actors. In general, I don't think our society works well like that in almost any area. So it has been a little bit exasperating to witness the confusion, but also an extraordinary privilege to try to bring that clarity and then with a systems lens think about, well, what are we trying to achieve in this world and how can we make that financeable? So I would say overarchingly, that's now my approach. I'm a professor of practice because I distinguish that from like tenure track professors that are more focused on publishing for academia. I research, but am completely oriented toward practical work and engagement. So we work with governments and intergovernmental organizations and companies and financial institutions, and that's where the big network comes from. If anybody doesn't know, I'm a little active on LinkedIn I try to bring some truths there, but that has, what is also true is that there's a decent recognition of the confusion. And so I am perceiving a appreciation for the clarity and kind of a hunger for authenticity and truth. And I think that's what's growing my personal network, keeping me exceptionally busy, but also representative of this program. And I represent this program everywhere I go, and I'm telling people that those that we're training in this program are the best analytical thinkers in this complicated and confused space. What we think of, I think what we tend to think of as climate finance, not only is simplistic and confused, but it leads to this narrative that climate finance is under attack. It's not, because climate finance is so many things. It's what are the systems, energy and mobility, and how do they get financed, and how do we think about risk, and what are the opportunities, and there's public sector institutions and private sector institutions. There's just so much happening beyond what we have traditionally thought of as climate finance or ESG or sustainable finance units, which are fine and good, and we work with many of them. And I mean, I think that they're doing work that is not benefiting from the thoughtful people that are in those positions, but those departments still exist. But there are just so many other areas in which being able to think about how changing climate, changing world shapes how we think about finance, and then how do we think about finance in a way to change the world to the one that we want to live in. That is an expansive set of opportunities. So that's, to have the opportunity to bring that into the classroom, hopefully you now see, is a dream, has been a dream. A year, as Esther said, not enough. I have found 17 years to be not enough, but it is nice because we really cram it in. You get what you make of it, in that it's constant opportunities, lunches, lectures, constant. And we're in New York, endless things to do. And of course, this is just the climate finance program, but we're part of the climate school, where there are also endless opportunities. And then we have partner programs, SUMA, the masters, the sustainability masters program, which is not quite as cool as our program, but they still have cool clubs, and we collaborate with them. And then SEPA, and so we're constantly doing, there are many student groups and other activities on campus that are passionate about these issues. So there's just no shortage of things to do, and no shortage of classes to take. And we're adding even more next year to the ones that we already have this year. So I think the very last thing I would just say is that I am a bit known in this space for taking an unorthodox approach to thinking about climate finance. I would say, and I'm not biased at all in assessing my own view, but I think coming from outside of the finance space and have it come from thinking more holistically about the way the world works, that at least my approach tries to be a bit more analytical and pragmatic, although there is no one on this planet more existentially concerned about or committed to the society we want to live in. But I actually find that I engage more with practitioners, finance sector, and others than with the climate community, that I think actually could use a lot of your advice in how to think about these things. But you'll get different perspectives in every class. That was what I was going to say, because it's not that the whole program represents my views at all. I think I would prefer that, but it's not up to me, and so it's just not the case. You'll hear from Gernot later, who's an incredibly wonderful friend and great and smart, and we were just talking about with Tricia, I think we align a lot, including on what we're trying to achieve, but talk about these topics very, very differently. And that's true across all of the faculty. Definitely true as between what you'll hear at the climate school and what you'll hear at the business school, and I think that's an incredible asset of the program. And as I say, and I will end on this, the most important thing I hope that you take away from this program, but you can take it away anyway. Here you'll get a lot of content, but the most important thing for anyone is to be able to think critically and analytically about information with which you're presented, just because we are presented with information that either represents specific interests or comes from a siloed approach or hasn't thought about solutions or whatever. And so I hope that we are strengthening the skill set here of being able to think critically about what we're trying to achieve, whether things make sense, what else is possible, and so on. And so I think it's great that you get exposure to so many different perspectives, and that you go room to room trying to think critically about how those pieces fit together. So maybe I'll say just one other thing about my hat that I sit in is that I direct this Columbia Center on Sustainable Investment, which is an applied research center. That's where I've been the whole time. And the center itself, we have a lot of opportunities for students to get involved in our work, not as many as I'm trying to create even more, but our work is very practice-based. We're advising governments. We're working in energy system planning in Southeast Asia. We're working on decarbonizing steel with our partners all over the world, and we have opportunities for students to get involved, and then we bring what we're learning into the classroom and bring the practitioners things. I think that's it. Good practice. But I please ask anything, and this is not the only opportunity. And I think also, hopefully you also know that in addition to this time now, next Saturday morning, You can also have an early morning coffee with me online virtually at 8 o'clock. And that's so that we can benefit from those who are not in New York. But you're gonna get, some of it might be redundant for you, but anyway, it's just another opportunity to ask questions, but please. Yeah, please.
Yeah, so it's the inaugural year of
Yeah.
the program. I wanted to hear your thoughts on kind of the benefits of being a young program, some of the detriments,
Yeah.
and changes from the first and the
Yeah, what a
second year that you
great
see.
question. What a great question. First of all, we are a young program in a young school. So there are like two layers of the answers to those questions. This school is, and I've been at Columbia for 21 years, the only time that I've experienced a school being willing, and not only willing, but striving to be innovative and to do things differently and to really think about what we're trying to teach and how to do things differently. God, is that refreshing after 17 years at the other schools that are fixed in their discipline. So I think the mindset, not just the ability, but the mindset of thinking about how to optimize what we're teaching and how and what the experiences are and is huge. And I hope that the climate school doesn't ever solidify too much, but being particularly young means that it's really in that let's try it stage, as Tricia knows, because I like to try a lot of things. Let's try it. So I think that there's a lot of room for ideas and opportunities, students that are starting the clubs, and the whole school is oriented around supporting that now, which is incredible. Plus another thing, but that's the being young. I was going to say that the fact that the school is also very practice oriented is a big distinction, but that's not the young part. The cons is that we're learning. But I see life as constantly learning and always trying to improve. So I think I actually think that we did pretty well in our first year. For sure, the one that bore the brunt of any learning pains was Tricia, who got to experience the joys of having two schools talk to one another, which is exceptionally difficult for anyone who's worked in university. Schools do not talk to one another in their systems, in their scheduling, in their calendars, in requirements. And so I think figuring out how to make that work smoothly between the business school, not for a lack of trying, but for a lack of systems, has been one of the growing pains. I think the only other one, I will also share one other perspective from having been an early investor in the Masters of Development Practice program at SEPA, and also was there in the very, very early years. And the other thing is that program, as I anticipate this one will, grew fast. And in the early years, it was a family. It was a family. And we all knew each other, and I don't know, Esther, if you'd feel this way, but there's a real cohort community. And as programs grow, some of that changes a bit. I mean, it depends on how big they grow. So I think the benefits of being I think that the feeling, the sense of familyness of a cohort that benefits from the early sizes. We're not scaling up fast so that we can keep everything manageable and get to know everyone personally and ensure that the experiences, that remains a big benefit for the students. But we're still developing classes. So like the feedback we hear from this year will inform next year. The feedback we get next year will inform so I would say that's, to me, the only cost is that as we're learning, the improvements are made for the next year. And it is it is a bummer of the 1-year program because I want you all to be the beneficiaries of the improvements, but I believe that the improvements in the program will benefit the whole graduate cohort because it's our commitment to making this program truly and exceptional in the literal sense. It is a unique program, and that those who have come through it, including those who helped to shape it from the beginning, will benefit from its growth and its strengthening over time.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Hi. Also, it's just amazing to finally meet you. Incredible.
I feel the same way. Tell me your name.
Adriana.
Okay, great.
So I got accepted yesterday, so it's really fresh. Thank you. But I have some apprehension, and I think you can potentially alleviate it.
Yeah.
I hope. So I worked in consulting for 2 years. I got exposed to ESG and I was like, wow, okay, this is interesting. And then I also grew up in Jamaica, so was like very exposed to a lot of hurricanes. Always wondered like how we could mobilize capital to kind of break that sovereign debt cycle that a lot of Caribbean or like small islands find themselves in. But while I was in consulting, I always avoided any project that had to do with like finance or like financial services or just anything that was like too quantitative. I was just like, I don't want to be building models. But my mentor kept saying like, you can't avoid like financial modeling or just finance in general if you want to work in corporate. And after realizing that, I was like really passionate about climate, and then I found out about this program literally 3 weeks ago. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it, but it's a 1-year program and it's the inaugural cohort. There isn't any data on like exit opportunities, so I'm kind of trying to fill in the gaps here. So I'm wondering, like, in 1 year, for someone who also doesn't have like a quantitative undergrad, like I come from the social sciences, and then I also obviously like avoided anything finance related in consulting. Do you actually think that I can come out of this program with the confidence to, you know, step into a boardroom or work at an asset management firm and be confident in conversations about how capital gets mobilized?
Yeah. Excellent question. I mean, like 100 questions in there that are all good. And by the way, to my LinkedIn post, I wrote a couple about Jamaica initially, which includes why I think the finance ecosystem gets finance wrong. And Jamaica is bearing the physical brunt of that, among so many other countries, and have another article coming out on Monday. First of all, consulting definitely doesn't understand finance and do it right, and they're benefiting from, I'm sorry to say, but it's true, they're benefiting from the confusion because it is leading to the need for a lot of models and disclosures that the consultancies are doing. It's not actually changing real outcomes in any meaningful way. So good thinking to stay out from it. That's what the reviewers must have seen in your application. What this class, this cohort, even the first and the second cohort, because it's a much bigger and more competitive pool even than the first, which was already big and competitive, is an incredibly diverse group of students. There are students who have deep financial background, don't know much about climate. There are those who are background in climate, don't know much about finance. There are those who really want to go into the financial sector and therefore want to understand climate from the financial perspective, and there are those who are determined to figure out innovative solutions for smallholder farmers, and so it's a different question. It's not that everyone's going to have the same experience. What my hope would be is that everyone leaves with the same analytical framework in understanding what we mean by, or what are all the different dimensions of climate finance, so that you have a sense of where one fits in. Will you, after 1 year, be competitive with MBA students looking to do climate analytics at an investment bank? No. But also because they're looking, those positions are the positions that are just going to search for MBAs, this program is not even meant to compete with, I would say. What you will benefit from this program is if you don't have a finance background, which I also didn't. I do strongly believe that you will have a very solid foundation in understanding what makes things financeable, how finance flows, the different instruments, the different institutions, and then huge opportunities to delve more deeply into a particular area. If you know that you're interested in the debt, in sovereign debt, or in thinking about the debt crisis, so not only, as Tricia knows, will I point to many different people to talk to and resources on that particular topic, but we also have classes that are specific for those particular types of interests. So definitely an opportunity to go even more deeply into any area of particular interest. I hope, and we've been working with our incredible career team to this, that the types of opportunities that will be available after this program, I think there are more unique opportunities for people who understand the role of finance in a more comprehensive way than those who go to learn corporate finance or asset management and have a climate lens in that. This program is not that. That's the business school, and they do that. And no, they do that. They have a climate lens to their MBA. I would say that this program is to understand much more comprehensively the climate challenge, all the different things that we're trying to finance, that need finance, that are being financed, what do you think about finance, all the different financial mechanisms, you'll take corporate finance, fundamentals evaluation, capital markets, how to think about climate risk. So a much more comprehensive understanding of the climate finance space. And to do that in 1 year is, I do think you will get that, and it's remarkable. It's very cool. So if one wants to be competitive in a very finance-focusy thing, if you don't have a solid finance background, it will be extra work to get that, I would say, in 1 year, but which is also possible. And actually, we do skills seminars, not, again, let's be, we can learn a lot by going to the skills seminars on how to do project finance models, on how to, on private equity. So there are opportunities to learn even more specifically. I want to distinguish that from being an expert in a space. But I'm biased again, but my professional fulfillment and success, I think, has been from understanding the big picture, having depth in important areas, and therefore being able to slot into the boardroom or a battery manufacturing company or someone doing regenerative agriculture or an international organization, and you understand what the specific financing challenges, constraints, consideration, tools, what they should be thinking about. That, I would say, is the unique comparative advantage of this program.
Thank you.
How'd I do?
You did good. You did good.
But we can keep talking about it because I know it is a big decision.
Yeah.
And especially
Add a
depending on-
practical part, just as a follow-up to what Lisa just said. Because a lot of people come from that non-finance background, but you need the bridge to exactly what Lisa's talking about. So we're looking into deepening what we did for this year's cohort because we felt, to your point about first year, like we thought, wow, people needed more of a bridge than we realized, because coming in, some people didn't feel as comfortable with those fundamentals before they even hit corporate finance and foundations evaluation. So we're looking into using the summer, building out more resources that are available to you guys, as well as other recommendations that, you know, can be self-driven, so that you come in feeling a little more solid, you have good Excel skills, you have good kind of like framing, and then you get into foundations evaluation. And of course, there's always like TAs and meetings with faculty and your classmates. I'll just give you one example. There were a whole bunch of people with your background like, stay away from finance, but now I'm in this program, what do I do? And we had another classmate who had a deep background in lots of things like, you know, financial accounting and project finance, et cetera, et cetera. And she set up a couple of informal coffee chats just to kind of mentor her classmates to kind of get them over the hump in that initial core class, so that they weren't, you know, just drowning all the time. So just to know that these things are things that we are looking at really carefully. We want a cohort with various backgrounds, and we now have much more data on how to kind of bring everyone to a similar kind of readiness, even though of course it's going to be quite different, right? If you worked in finance for 5 years and you never touched finance, you're going to be different in the way you approach the classes, but we want you to have the tools. So we're looking at that on a practical level as well as like just curricular goal wise.
And then just for, thank you for all of that. And for those who do have more of a finance background who are hearing this, the classes at the business school are business school classes. Those are what the business school students are learning. The core classes at the business school are just with our cohort. So in the core classes, fundamentals, evaluation, corporate finance, capital markets
and investments,
yes, climate
risk, climate finance.
That's just the MSCF cohort, but then all the electives, which are also required, real estate and accounting and
impact investing, project
financing, renewable
finance,
energy.
yeah.
Those are mixed. Those are our students with the business school students. So just to say, in terms of like, and they're doing great. They're doing really great. In fact, one of our classes, I think they did even better than the business
They
school
did,
students.
and there was a big party. The faculty member came knocking on my door for budget to take them all out for drinks, because he said in the history of the business school, no cohort has performed better on a final exam. I was like, they were so proud. We were like, I'm a mom of one, but here I'm a mom of everybody, because I had the pride I felt in our cohort that they performed so well. And so it just, you know, that's a point, like they are competitive, they are leaning in, they are doing the work. It's not always easy, but they're asking the right questions, and they're here for a year and they're like, I'm gonna get it done, you know, and I'm gonna figure out there are resources up the wazoo on how you can, you know, help yourself get it done. So
Yeah.
Yeah, so you kind of mentioned the benefits of having this analytical mindset and, with also the understanding that there are a lot of different pathways that students can go down after a program like this. Are there any specific skills that you think are missing, like from this intersectional field that like you're hoping to instill in the students of this program?
Yeah, that's such a good question. That's such a good question. I am working on a paper now that was supposed to be done a long time ago, but every night I spend hours on it. It's almost done. What the paper is about, and actually Liberty Mutual was, somebody from Liberty Mutual is one that requested, but now it's already gonna make a stir and I am excited to get it out. It is on trying to disentangle the concept of climate risk. So it is on the need for analytical clarity and how much has come from confusion about analytical clarity. But in one whole section, I talk about why analytical clarity is valuable for distinct functions and institutions. So I would say that the specific skills that are useful do depend on what area one wants to go into. So if one is going into investing and making investment decisions, that is a different set of tools and skills that I would hope one has than if they are going to be a central bank or going into risk analysis so I think that's why sorry to emphasize again that I think the ability to think clearly, to even know what questions to ask is the most foundational thing. And that's hard in this field because there's not much of that clarity. Then I do think having specific skills depending on what wants to do is really valuable. If someone is interested in making something financeable, understanding the mechanisms of understanding, for instance, how risk is assessed and how guarantees function or different risk mechanisms becomes very important. So I wouldn't say that there's a universal skill set per se. I think for some students, if they're really going to financing, knowing how to do project finance is very important, which is why we've expanded the project finance offerings. Is people who are going to go into a field where they're doing project finance should know how to do a finance model. But if you're going to go into many other, you wouldn't necessarily need that. So I think no, in short, I wouldn't say there's a specific analytical tool, but across the board, the answer will be yes when one knows what one wants to do. Then we dig into what the skills are that make it useful to be able to do that. Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time to go through all of this. It's really helpful. My question more surrounds kind of how do we approach you guys for our expression of interest, because I know that you don't necessarily have a lot, and it's like on the like blue economy, blue finance front.
Yeah.
Whereas like developing that sector would be really
Yeah.
important for my career transition.
Yeah.
And how would I go about expressing that
Yeah.
interest, as well as potentially developing the cohort, because I work in marine conservation, so it's not like I'm far from the field.
We were just talking about marine conservation. My two favorite hobbies are skiing and scuba diving, both at serious
Up
risk.
and down.
So yeah, and both at extreme risk. That's why I care about the climate. I always joke about that with Bruce Usher, our faculty director. He also really likes skiing. So I'm like, it's why we're both in this field, right? It's just to preserve our mountain time and our scuba time. I'm on the WEF Council for Blue Regenerative Economy because I care so deeply about it. But it's true that by time and in the course allocation, it's not well represented. We do have a student this year who's been very interested in blue economy, and so at least as a start, we've connected him with several practitioners who are leaders in the field of the blue economy and can do even more than that. Actually, I teach the core mitigation class, and last year in the mitigation class, in one of the classes, we had a climate tech, a climate accelerator entrepreneur specifically in the blue economy come and speak to the whole mitigation class when we were talking about climate tech. So this is one of the cases where you have a huge network that in terms of what can be built, the sky's the limit. Panels, the networks. I will admit that one of my frustrations in a small inaugural class is that I would like to have a class on every single topic. And that has been a challenge, is in thinking about where to start with the classes, where to start with the classroom classes. And so critical topics, we don't yet have classes on that I hope that we eventually build. But finding other ways to learn, bringing people to campus, starting clubs, we're discussing how to do that. And Tricia absorbs every idea and makes it happen somehow. It's a magic thing. I'm sure you admit it, but we're hungry for the ideas and we'll figure out how to make it work. And just to assure you, there are a lot of people who are interested in blue finance, and we have a huge network of people who are working on it, which is good because we need it. Yeah. Yeah, we'll start with you and then we'll come to you. So yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, you. What's your name? Yeah. Yes.
Andy.
Andy.
Hi. So I think at this point I'm an early to mid-career professional, and I've been in finance for a few years, and I think I ran out of doing finance for the sake of finance versus doing finance for the sake of building a world that I wanted to see. So I'm posing a question that will help me curate my academic experience, but also exit opportunities, as people mentioned. So I have been in institutional investing for a while, and I want to understand the conundrum between having institutional investing challenge their existing frameworks, like existing modeling, versus getting institutional investing to understand more about all these different ways that we can finance these things. So I think I want to understand it more from what has your experience been with practitioners. There's lots of people that are managing 401ks, that are managing sovereign wealth funds, and and I think it's one of the main reasons ESG has gone out of vogue, because they made all these investments in the public sector that ended up not being profitable, and they have no ways to think about it. And I've seen that interest decline from 2020 to 2025. So I think I just want to understand, again, as someone coming in with very specific experience in finance, it is an academic question and a practitioner question to say, how should I curate my experience so that I'm either directed towards challenging existing frameworks, like how open are people to that, which means me going back to my bosses and saying, I know this new thing now, so let me come in and redo some of the things that we were doing, versus maybe starting somewhere else, starting with a different type of financing framework where people are already more open to some of these questions.
Okay, great question. First of all, you're reminding me of one of a sad reaction that I got to a LinkedIn post was from I didn't know him, but a sustainability lead at World Gold Council that had commented on something I wrote. I can't even remember what it was, and said something like, "It's nice to be reminded of why we're doing all of the carbon accounting and reporting." And I was like, I did comment on how really we're in this field now. We're in this space of we're doing carbon accounting because we're supposed to. We had a wonderful friend from Goldman Sachs come the other day who was talking about carbon accounting, and I asked him afterwards in the Q&A, how important do you think that, how important is that for your, and he paused and he said, we're required to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that there is a sense of why are we doing this, and it's not having a lot of, okay. What I would say is that different I try to be pragmatic about how different institutions work, what their mandates are, what their levers are, and what they're capable of doing. Institutional investors that largely invest in public equities, the most that they can do really is just be more aware of where there might be good growth, but that's a value thing, and it's good and it's fine, and you should know where the economy is growing, where there are going to be opportunities, where there are going to be risks. Okay, but in the core function, that's largely what they do. If you're in a sustainability function on that team, what I would like them to do is to help create help make more things financeable that fit in with the fiduciary mandates of the asset managers or of institutional investors. I am not one of the people that thinks that we're going to change the value system of institutional investors or get them. And by the way, the investments I have in the market, I wouldn't mind if they're managed in a prudential way. At the same time, I'd like to make the world I want to live in financeable. But I think there are institutions that have more effective levers to do that. So I would say if you're open to a institutional pivot, then thinking about, well, who are the institutions that have more leverage? Who's taking on more risk, or who's part of these risk sharing? Or there are now a number of different institutions that are doing guarantees, which I think are very cool. They're very effective. So there are institutions that are more effective at doing that, or structuring deals, because they're designed to either take on more risk or to address risk. If one wants to really have impact, you find those. Otherwise, having armed with what you know, going back to the asset manager, asset owners, and banks, and saying, you know what our sustainability functions could do? I'll give you one more example and then I'll stop. I have been talking to a sustainability lead at a large bank who I think gets it. And I'm like, one thing, there's a mismatch between the length of the financing for infrastructure and how long infrastructure needs financing. It's a real problem. You get infrastructure financing for 7 years, but you need 25 years of infrastructure financing. So he's now thinking about that, writing papers. Can we bring people together? If in sustainability in a bank, I'd like them to be thinking about that. How can we understand building on what, let's bring in our infrastructure team and our project finance team to think about how can we structure this with more securitization or whatever, how do others do this? So I think solving the problems of financeability or what makes things fit within prudential mandates, that's my approach. It's not the approach of the climate finance advocacy ecosystem that is focusing on different valuation metrics and systemic risk, and to me, that's not an effective approach, but I'm sure you'll hear about it in your classes because others really buy into it.
I mean, I'll just say that actually I was at Goldman. And I think the other thing is before I even knew about the program, I came across a post of yours where you were criticizing like the carbon accounting stuff, like because these are just ways to regurgitate the same thing. And I was very surprised because you are with Columbia, and I was like, well, this seems like someone who's at a big institution actually taking BlackRock and all these companies to kind of making them accountable to say we don't need another metric to do carbon.
But can I just say, I'm no defender of our large financial institutions, but I don't think that they're the problem with I think that I actually feel like I have more traction in the financial institution. They do not see my work as criticizing them. Again, not a massive fan of things that they do. Could they do things better? Sure. But I think they also find these systems completely incoherent. So I think I would say it's less about accountability and less about accountability to them and more about what are we doing? Why are we asking for that? Why are we refining methodologies that are not even designed properly to work? So I work a lot. I mean, like this Liberty Mutual paper that I'm working on, the traction and the engagement is mostly with the financial community. I think it's the climate community that's going to have the hardest time with these messages because it's changing what their approach has been. So I think the authenticity, and the last thing I say on that point is that I posted also recently, this Ahmed Saeed, who's the CEO of Allied Climate Partners, introduced me to this concept of preference falsification, which was very helpful to hear once I saw it, which is that there seems to be like broad acceptance of some of these systems. Oh yeah, we need disclosures, we need carbon accounting, we need all these things, but then actually there's many people know that these don't actually, but they can't say it because they're institutionally constrained, professionally constrained. And I can, because I'm not institutionally and professionally constrained, but I think it's helpful for others to know and to have the tools and the analytical framework. We have no time, is that what you're telling me, Esther? You can imagine how my classes go every time. Okay, good, and I know, and I like, sometimes, yes, okay. And we can continue, but yes, please.
I'll keep it short, but so I'm from Colombia and I flew in just to like learn about this. I love the biodiversity of my country. I love the biodiversity of Latin America and the Caribbean. We have the mangroves, we have rainforests, we have everything, right? So the biggest problem, and I had the privilege to be at COPs, I had the privilege to work with the ministers of environment, with private companies, but always the problem is there's no money. So you make the policy and then there's no money to implement the policy, right? And then where's the money? In the private sector. So my interest in this program is how do I drive the money from the private sector to Latin America, to these biodiversity hotspots that do not have the money, that are perceived as high risk, but also like, I know they're not interested in that. I know they don't care about the little frog in Colombia or stuff like that. So it's like, how do you sell it to them and like the return of investment is good? Because they really don't care about that, but I want to like see how to sell it to them so that they care about it.
Yeah. Oh, we have time for a lecture? I think my very short answer on this is that I deeply care about financing nature and biodiversity too, and I worry about our approach to doing it. It is never going to be adequately financed by the private sector, and it shouldn't be. And it was never the concept that the private sector would finance it until this boom of thinking that the private sector is the solution to everything. It is not to say the private sector doesn't have a role, and it is where the finance is. I can come to that in a moment, but we should understand what will never be financed adequately and at scale by the private sector. Nature, biodiversity, landscape resilience, any type of public good. If there's not a return, if we want it to reach the most vulnerable, then it's not gonna be financed adequately by the private sector. So first of all, so then the question is, how do we get the finance from the private sector, or where it is, to finance it? Through public mechanisms, because that's the only way. It needs to come through public mechanisms. A not good model of it, but a not good one is the TFFF, the proposed. Okay, that was trying to do something like that. Bad design, which we can talk about later, but the concept of how do we build a fund that can generate some type of return for investors to invest in a fund, but the fund's disbursement is public, which is how development banks are financed. Also, public finance is by borrowing on markets. If you're in a rich country, you can borrow very affordably and finance your public infrastructure or other things, which is horrible. If you're in Colombia or a developing country and you're perceived to be high risk, you can't borrow. First of all, you're told not to borrow, and then when you do borrow, it's very expensive. So that is a part of the system that I would tackle for biodiversity finance too, which is that every country should be able to borrow affordably and encouraged and supported to invest in their public goods, especially when they're global public goods like nature, biodiversity, and so on. So I would reframe the thinking about it to that these are global public goods that need a distinct type of mechanism. What is the mechanism that we move money from where it exists into global public goods? But I don't think that they're gonna come in the form of biodiversity bonds or specific projects, with some minor exceptions on the margins where their dependencies may be okay. But the general thing for financing those at scale should be thinking about public finance and how to actually adequately finance public finance.